AUM constructed 4 trailer-mounted portable solar power units under the $240,000 grant from EPA. Each unit has about $20,000 worth of parts, including several hundred photosensitive silicon discs, NiCad batteries to store power for use on cloudy days or at night, the trailer bodies, and assorted gauges, instruments, and hardware. The EPA is going to use these units in remote locations where commercial power isn't available. And AUM's photovoltaic expert, Alan Gunn, says this is just the beginning for other practical applications for solar power.
In underdeveloped countries where we have a need for water pumping is a very good application. In fact, over in places like Saudi Arabia and the Middle East and down in South America and, basically underdeveloped rural areas of the world where water is not to be found naturally, they have to have deep well pumping stations and whatnot. And since they do not have what we call grid-connected power, commercially available power, they typically do that with diesel-powered generators. And photovoltaics is very competitive with these particular applications.
But Mr. Gunn told me that it's just not economically feasible at this time to make plans to build a photovoltaic system on your roof at home. It's too expensive when you consider how much it costs to finance a large unit, large enough to supply an entire household.
It's the cost of the photovoltaic modules that we see today. The modules currently are costing on the neighborhood of $8.50 to $9 a peak watt. In order for residential units to be competitive with the power company, they're going to have to get the cost down to about $2 a peak watt. So we have a ways to go yet. Assuming an energy-efficient home, a new design, one that has the proper insulation, etc., you would need about $80,000 to put a photovoltaic system on that home.
Needless to say, Professor Don Chambliss is extremely pleased that AUM's plan was the one selected by EPA over 47 other plans from big businesses and established high-tech universities.
In more recent years, we see a number of faculty members, such as myself and many others, become more and more involved in research, which is part of the maturing process for a university. Pure research, we have had some of that, and I see this as the first step in a applied research capability for AUM. And I'm really extremely pleased that we've been able to be involved in this. And I think it's a great thing for AUM, a great thing for Montgomery, and I think a real part of the maturing process of the university.
At Thursday's demonstration of the units, all this equipment at the news conference was powered by one of the solar units, including this rather boastful computer.
I am a photovoltaic computer. A photovoltaically powered computer, I meant to say. The electricity I am using comes directly from the sunlight.
I'm Bob Howell, WSFA TV News, reporting from the AUM campus.
I am very proud that AUM has been chosen for prestigious job of designing and building these photovoltaic units.
The
lecturer was Dr. Bill Rogers from University Hospital in Birmingham. He told me that the use of the drug streptokinase is spreading throughout the medical profession. Here's what the drug does. It dissolves blood clots that are cutting off vital oxygen supplies to the heart, which causes a heart attack. The drug is injected by means of a heart catheter directly to the location of the clot.
And small catheters or tubes are fed up through the blood vessels in the groin to the origin or mouth of these arteries on the outside of the heart, and this particular medication known as streptokinase is then infused or dripped into the mouth of the coronary arteries in an attempt to dissolve the blood clot within the artery.
And Dr. Rogers says the use of the drug is an activist treatment, contrary to the generally accepted procedure of painkillers and bed rest.
This treatment that I am currently discussing is indeed an activist treatment because in addition to doing all of those things, we take the patient to the heart catheterization laboratory and take pictures of the heart and the heart arteries to try to establish where the problem is and then try to do something about the problem using this streptokinase medication or some other invasive technique.
But Dr. Rogers says it's very important that the heart attack victim get to the hospital quickly and that the hospital be equipped to insert the heart catheter.
Provided the patients get to the facility within the first, say, 3 to 4 hours following onset of their symptoms, the blood clot can be dissolved in about 80% of the cases that have been studied to date. It also appears that if the blood clot is dissolved within the first 6 to 8 hours or so after onset of symptoms, there is a strong likelihood that the function of the heart, that is the pumping action of the heart, will improve considerably over the next 1 to 2 weeks. This is not the case if the blood clot does not dissolve or if the patient does not undergo these emergency procedures.
There is a risk involved, but Dr. Rogers says he feels in most cases the benefits outweigh those risks. I'm Bob Howell, WSFA TV News.
When the state kindergarten lottery was held Friday, Richard and Carol Darden of Montgomery were winners and losers. Their son Matt was chosen. His twin brother Andy was not.
It's really basically unfair to the children.
So perhaps understandably, the Dardens are not happy with the kindergarten lottery system.
After 5 or 6 years that they've had the lottery, that they should either have all the children attend public kindergarten or give them the opportunity to attend, or just do away with the public kindergarten altogether.
I cannot imagine being a first grade teacher and having half the children that have maybe attended school previously and then a certain few that haven't. They're going to be behind.
9.
Yeah, wait.
1, 2, 3, 4,
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
The Dardens say they'll send both Matt and Andy to a private kindergarten rather than send just one to a public school. That means not only extra expense, but also finding extra transportation, since their daughter Jenny goes to the public school.
We feel fortunate that we're able to afford to enroll both Andy and Matt in the private kindergarten, and we feel like that we feel for the parents that didn't get drawn in the lottery and their 5-year-old will not be able to attend kindergarten.
If you wait until a week before school starts to look for a place to send your child, and your child doesn't get drawn, then you might not be able to put them in a school at all.
And Mrs. Darden says, after all, some of the excitement is lost, just some of the plain old fun. When all summer long, children ask when, where, and how they'll go to school, and all parents can say is, we don't know.
7, 8, 9, 10. Ah, you got it!
Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Goes.
Montgomery firefighters worked a good hour non-stop just to bring the fire at Bainbridge and Madison Streets under control. It was late at night and the fire burned at about 1,400 degrees. It was hot enough to melt copper pipes, glass windows, and aluminum siding of the buildings. What Fire Chief Jim Sutherland finds so remarkable about this fire is that only 2 of his firefighters were slightly injured by a falling wall. There were none of the customary strained or pulled muscles, and not a single fireman was taken to the hospital for heat exhaustion. Fire Chief Sutherland.
And I have seen days in years gone by where a situation like that we would have had 10 or 15 men overcome from heat.
Chief Sutherland credits his men's able performance largely to an exercise program he initiated 18 months ago. All city firemen must participate. They can walk 2 miles in 30 minutes, or they can run 1.5 miles in 15 minutes, but it's one or the other every workday if they want to stay with the department. Chief Sutherland says firemen carry around 62 pounds in protective clothing and breathing equipment, and that's before they lift one fire hose or raise a ladder.
When they bounce out of the bed and don their turnout clothes and aboard that truck, the adrenaline begins to flow very rapidly. That heart, their respiratory system, everything about them is brought into peak performance. They've got to be physically fit.
Chief Sutherland has seen other city fire departments start expensive exercise programs, only to have them fizzle out. He decided that jogging, with its ability to tone muscles and increase circulation, was just what his department needed. Sutherland admits not all the men liked the idea at first.
I have men coming to me now, rather than saying I'm all against it, they say, I don't particularly like it, but I like the results.
Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
Better job for the citizens.
court to reconsider. And I went over and talked to the PSC attorneys, and they're really upset with it, but it's out of their hands. This other situation, just if they get called back in another special session, I wish they'd have done something this time. The commission set its own rules. That's what it's over there for. It can make any rules it wants to make. It can interpret its rules any way it wants to. There's no reason in the world to have a PSC if he can't even make his own rules without the court telling him how to do it. In other words, that's I hear all this talk about abolishing the PSC, which I think would be disastrous, but you might say it's already been abolished, because all they're doing is sending stuff over there and the court's just doing what they want to with it. Even the good orders, they send over there the good orders. I don't believe the court even reads them. You know, I think they just got other things more important or something, or they don't understand them maybe. I offered to debate any of their assistants. You know, they got the same authority to hire staff the PSC has. It says right there they can hire accountants, economists, lawyers, anybody they want to hire to do rate cases, and they don't hire any.
Oh yeah, we've got some small ones, but not in the segment range, small ones. But this could physically be done, but it can't get y'all back.
Well, it's got to where we got federal courts and federal judges making the decision.
In Washington, I hate to tell you, it's not so simple.
Well, across another one into another one to vote. What are you doing?
He does. He has to do that. So do I. Go show him the lines. Go show him the lines.
Listen, I live on Harmon Street. Lived at 2030 and have since 1940. Have been. Well, I ain't too sure anybody else knows.
Come on, let's go. He's going to do the best he can. Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you.
Many businesses are suffering this summer, but business at the Montgomery Office for Unemployment Claims is booming. Just as they have for months now, people continue lining up to file their claims. The director of the State Unemployment Compensation Agency, James Holland, says the prolonged high number of claims is taking a toll on the Unemployment Trust Fund.
The current status at the moment, Tom, is roughly $74.5 million. And of course that compares to the minimum normal amount that we should have in the trust fund, which should be around $395 million. That means that we're in a very precarious position now, and it also means that come March of next year, we're probably going to go bankrupt.
The state fund went broke in 1975 and had to borrow $57 million from the federal government. Now the state is paying out about $5 million a week in benefits. But even if the state fund goes broke again, Holland says workers will be compensated.
We will borrow the money to pay the benefits.
Unemployed workers whose benefits have run out might get a break if Congress okays a proposed 10-week extension of benefits. Money for that would come from the feds. For now, at the state level, officials are keeping their fingers crossed. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Oh yeah, we've got some small ones, but not in the segment range, small ones. But this could physically be done. Washington, I hate to tell you, it's not so simple.
Well, how did they get it down there? How did they get it changed in the first place?
Because this pre about, but we get
his district across another one into another one to vote. What are you doing?
He does. He has to do that. So do I. Go show him the lines. Go show him the lines.
The precinct.
Well, that's what
you sending me through one into another one to vote. Now cross one into another.
All right, which one? Do you live here? Now, where are you going to vote?
City Hall.
No, you will not vote in City Hall.
Well, I've been voting in City Hall.
I know, but you won't hit more.
Well, that's what I'm telling you. I have been. I ain't too sure anybody else knows.
Come on, let's go. He's going to do the best he can. Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you.
It would for some of them.
Well, we can put three.
I don't think they will. But we have not gotten approval, and it requires approval technically. But we couldn't wait.
Usually PSC Commissioner Jim Folsom Jr. catches the wrath of Carrington during news conferences, but today it was the state Supreme Court's turn. Currington says the decision last week by the High Court in the General Telephone Company rate case dramatizes the sorry state of affairs that utility regulation in the state has reached. Currington says the ruling by the High Court will force the PSC to use Federal Communication Commission accounting guidelines when determining rate cases for phone companies. An FCC memo dated April 1st says the state public service commissions and even the FCC itself is not bound by its own guidelines. Currington says ultimately Alabama phone company customers will pay.
And as a result of this, Alabama telephone customers are going to be faced with monumental rate increases. You know, we got over 30 telephone companies. Each one of them can now come in and ask for rate increases based on FCC rule changes.
Currington sent a letter to state lawmakers last week asking them to examine and clarify the role of the Supreme Court in the next special session. Currington says it's time for the legislature to do something about the High Court before things get out of control. And the PSC has no control over the utilities it's supposed to regulate. Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.
This was issued in April of this year.
Most restaurants in town pay minimum wage, $3.35 an hour, because they're under the wage and hour law. But tips have always been a sore spot with restaurants, waitresses, and waiters alike. There's usually no way to tell for sure just how much a waiter or waitress makes in tips, and generally those receiving the gratuities don't like owning up to how much they get. And restaurant owners don't want the extra bookkeeping headaches.
And this tip thing would just be an unfair thing, and it really wouldn't be in the best interest of the public or the food people or the thousands of people who are employed in the food business. And it'd just be an added burden that would just be hard to cope with.
Now that it seems like it's going to pass, it kind of upset me because my accountant fees now is getting out of hand. My payroll got so difficult, I had to put it on a computer and to farm it out. And you know, they charge you for every entry. This is another entry. It'll be an added expense.
If the bill passes, there will have to be some system devised for reporting tips. But even with this, restaurant owners agree that they still won't know if their waiters and waitresses report all of their earnings. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
The director of the State Unemployment Compensation Agency, James Holland, says the trust fund is in bad shape.
The current status at the moment, Tom, is roughly $74.5 million. And of course that compares to the minimum normal amounts that we should have in the trust fund based on the formula that the feds developed, which should be around $395 million.
The trust fund is where money comes from to pay almost $5 million of state unemployment claims every week. At that rate of spending, the fund will go bankrupt by next March, and a turnaround in the unemployment situation won't necessarily save the fund.
At this late point in time, to do any good, you would have to have a significant drop.
The state fund has gone broke before. In 1975, that time the state borrowed $57 million from the federal government. And if it happens this time,
we will borrow the money to pay the benefits.
Of course, that would mean paying the money back to the federal government with interest. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Well, we maintain that we have the right to endorse or not to endorse, and it will be based solely on the screening tonight concerning the various candidates. There are a number of issues that our people are certainly concerned about at this present time. The number one issue that I can pick up is employment, or the unemployment rate among blacks, especially here in Montgomery County. So we certainly will be questioning the candidates concerning their ideas on getting jobs in the Montgomery area. There are a number of other issues as it relates to employment in various government positions that we certainly will be questioning the candidates on also.
Members of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers Union voted last night to reject the contract offer, which would reportedly have brought the union a 15% hike in wages and benefits over the next 2 years. Negotiators for both sides had reached tentative agreement on the new contract Saturday night after 2 months of talks, but the union membership refused to ratify that new agreement. Alabama Power Company officials say they've been told by union leaders that workers would not walk off their jobs even though a new contract isn't in force.
The union leadership has assured the company that they will continue to work for some length of time. I don't know that there's any deadline on how long that would extend, but they are working. We've had absolutely no problems today.
Power Company officials say they will continue to meet with union negotiators at their request. Union officials have not been available for comment, and it's not known which points in the new contract were rejected by union members. Mac Carmack, WSFA TV News.
Real, I'll call you. Okay.
Go way around.
No, last night, the employees that belong to the IBEW, which is about 3,900 employees around the state, they voted to reject the proposal that the company offered them this weekend. So now...
Proponents of increasing the water flow down the Coosa River below Jordan Dam say the diversion of water through Bolden Dam has hurt fishing, canoeing, and other water sports around Wetumpka. The chairman of the Save Our River Committee, Joe Billy Fain, says the flow should be split 50-50 between Bolden Dam and Jordan Dam. He says most of the time the 7-mile stretch of the Coosa River running through Wetumpka is nothing more than a stagnant pond.
But there's a legal action called riparian rights. According to one of our lawyers in town, George Howard, riparian rights means that a man upstream can't cut off the water to a man downstream. So this is a legal question that can be brought up, but I hope we can go without doing this, because usually in legal action nobody really wins.
Alabama Power Company Representative Worth Roberts says his company is meeting or exceeding the federal requirement for water flow through Jordan. He says the power company uses the hydroelectric generators in Bolden Dam more because they produce the most electricity. State conservation officials say a new water flow study will begin soon to determine how much water is needed in the Coosa River below Jordan Dam. The Wetumpka City Council appointed Councilmember Jeanette Barrett to work with the committee and to keep the council advised of work on the water flow study. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
Is there any way really to know how much your waiters and waitresses do make in tips?
No, ma'am, unless we had the whole world watching them. That'll be about the only way I know how to do it. It would just be an impossible task, really.
It is a
John
slight
Deep,
burden
co-owner
on-
of the Sahara
on
restaurant,
the
says he
employer
can
as
only
far as
give an
upkeep is
accurate
concerned.
account of his charge
But,
tips. He says he has to
as
take
far
the
as-
waiter's word for cash tips. He says if the bill passes, it would only prove to be a terrific bookkeeping headache.
The committee defeated it at first, and I was tickled to death because that's another a job that I don't have to do because I do keep the records, you see. And but now that it seems like it's going to pass, it kind of upset me because my accountant fees now is getting out of hand. My payroll got so difficult. I had to put it on the computer, found it out, and you know, they charge you for every entry. This is another entry. It'll be an added expense.
Both Deep and Barron agree that if the bill passes, there will still be no guarantee that all tips earned will ever be reported. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
The Opp High School Bearcats are entering their second year under Coach Hinton Johns, and they're hoping it will be as productive as the first. Opp finished 8-3 last season and made it to the state 3A playoffs before losing to eventual champion Eufaula in the first round. Coach Johns says a repeat performance of that will be tough.
I would like to think we could, but I kind of doubt that we'll be able to, Rick. We've got, as we were talking a while ago before we came on air, we were talking about the schedule, and it's a lot tougher schedule this year than it has been in the last couple of years here. We played 9 3As and a 4A, and my own personal opinion is we could have as good a football team as we had last year and probably not have as good a record.
Y'all lost a lot of offense from last year, too.
Yeah, we were fortunate in the fact that we had 3 real good football players playing running back for us last year, and of course now you work with them, keep them 4 years, and get them about ready to play, and then they graduate on you. And so we lost those, don't have them back, and we also lost some receivers that helped us move the football. So on that side of the ball, we're hurting as far as people that have played there.
The Bobcats will open their tough schedule against 4A power Carroll of Ozark, August 27th, here at home in Opp. Tonight at 10 o'clock, we'll take a look at the McKenzie Tigers. Reporting from Opp, Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports. Last year, the McKenzie Tigers made it all the way to the 1A state finals before losing to Hazelwood. So the obvious question for Coach Sam Dewar is, can his team repeat last year's performance?
Dewar is hoping his team can repeat that great 12-2 record of last season. He says if adequate replacements can be found in the line and as young players come through, McKenzie might be right back in the 1A state championship hunt this season.
Right now. We're hoping that some of our young men will step forward and fill some places. As you know, we lost all of our offensive line, you might say, and so we're going to look at a lot of new faces on offense and defensive line. And I think the key is going to be how quick they can, step in and fill the spaces.
The season for McKenzie will open Friday night the 27th at home against Brantley. Tomorrow night we visit Laverne and Greenville. On the road with high school football preview, Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports in McKenzie.
On July 22nd, Tom Krebs resigned as director of the State Securities Commission, citing personal reasons and a desire to spend more time with his family. 2 weeks later, the Associated Press quoted sources as saying Krebs' resignation came after he allegedly sent commission investigators to check up on Attorney General Charles Graddick. Mr. Graddick is a member of the Securities Commission. But in his speech to the Kiwanis Club, Krebs confined his comments to securities fraud and other economic crimes. He reviewed his 7 years with the commission, saying many of his successes would not have been possible without the cooperation of others, including district attorneys, governors, and the cop on the street. After the speech, we asked Krebs about the Associated Press reports.
Dennis, the record for the commission speaks for itself. I didn't get to comment on all that.
Did you send people to check on the Attorney General?
Dennis, I'm not going to say anything about all that. Thank you anyway.
Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
to see you. How you doing? The critical issue, I do believe it is there. It is there to be won. It is not won at the moment, but the crowds are getting bigger everywhere we go. People are responding very favorably to what I stand for and what I believe in. And I think that everybody is now recognizing that we got a fight on the hand after September the 7th. That indeed, on September the 8th, the scoreboard is going to read, Farmer nothing, Vistas nothing, as we start the second half.
Last weekend, same ones will be in effect this weekend, and those trucks will be out.
None. Move adopt the order. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. Council, ladies and gentlemen, you heard the reading of the resolutions brought before the council. This time I need a motion. Okay, is either one in council? Motion carries and ordinance has been passed. Hearing none, I declare the hearing has been held and matters now properly before the council. Need a motion.
Mr. President,
Oliver.
I move that we suspend the rules in order to consider the resolution at this point in time.
The teleconference with the senator in Washington was sponsored by the State Public Library Service. The conference linked the senator with 17 public libraries throughout the state. The senator's address dealt with the need to strengthen U.S. trade in the world market and how that will affect Alabama. Mr. Denton says a strong military plays a big role in giving our country economic leverage.
Many Americans think that spending for defense is a detriment to our economic prospects. That is short-range illogic, not long-range common sense.
The senator says a stronger U.S. trade market also means a weakening of markets in communist countries.
When we are seen as a strong nation and determined in our strength, our allies are eager to trade with us. We find ready access to their natural resources, to markets throughout the world.
When the senator accepted questions from the audience, though, the conversation moved closer to home as listeners asked just what it all means to Alabama. Senator Denton says Alabama has a great chance for improving its economic position, and utilization of natural resources in the state, like waterways, will play a big part. That didn't answer the questions of at least one listener who wanted to know what manufacturers will ship on the waterways if the economy doesn't improve. As for the conference itself, library officials were pleased, and they say they'll do it again. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Joseph Paul Franklin was found innocent this evening of violating the civil rights of Vernon Jordan by shooting him in the back in a Fort Wayne hotel parking lot more than 2 years ago. The avowed racist stood expressionless as the verdict was read. But as Franklin turned to sit down, a big smile came to his face, and he flashed the victory symbol to the jury. The 12 members of the all-white jury deliberated for 8 hours before finding Franklin innocent. The federal lawyers who told the jury at the beginning of the trial they would write a book against Joseph Paul Franklin described him today in closing arguments as not simply a racist, but a man obsessed with his hatred of blacks. Franklin showed no emotion as the prosecutor told the jury he was a young racist from Mobile, Alabama, who had hit the big time when he shot Vernon Jordan. But Frank Kimbrough, Franklin's court-appointed lawyer and a former federal prosecutor himself, said the government's case was quite a story. It just didn't fit. Kimbrough added they're trying to hang the shooting on Franklin to conveniently answer the need to solve the case. The not guilty verdict does not mean Joseph Paul Franklin will be getting out of jail. He'll be returning to Utah to serve 4 consecutive life sentences for killing 2 black men. But in the case against Vernon Jordan, Joseph Paul Franklin is innocent. Roger O'Neill, NBC News, South Bend, Indiana.
It'll be people like Rio Kirkland and Bob.
Governor James, Finance Director Rex Rayner, and State School Superintendent Wayne Teague make up the authority charged with splitting up a $45 million fund for school construction. But the vote was 2-1, with Superintendent Teague unhappy with some of the choices.
All I know is I saw that list about 30 seconds before the meeting started.
and therefore do not know why those were picked out to be funded.
Superintendent Teague argued some more needier schools were overlooked as $800,000 was awarded to the Mountain Brook school system in a fashionable Birmingham suburb.
I'm sure that Mountain Brook has needs. It's done a lot of good for their own school system, as many other systems have. And we have a situation in this state where the youngsters going to school in facilities are unsafe, unsanitary, many other things. And we've not addressed those needs yet.
But Governor James and the Finance Director Rex Rayner argued all schools on today's list were chosen from a list of 50 or more priority schools submitted by the superintendent. But a comparison of the superintendent's list of recommendations for a $13 million award show 14 of the 25 schools received money not recommended by the Department of Education. The superintendent suggested money should have been released to school systems facing possible asbestos ceiling problems, or what he calls serious sewage problems. 1 month ago, Governor James was criticized for releasing an earlier $10 million award as political plums to legislators who voted for his reforms. Superintendent Teague refused to carry his objections that far today.
I did not. I said you folks will draw your own conclusions on that. I think there's some very interesting projects in that list.
Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
All I know is I saw that list about 30 seconds before the meeting started.
So, 10-15. Go ahead.
I did it alone in the Securities Commission. There's a very fine staff there, a very professional investigative staff that has done an outstanding job over 7 years, as well as an extremely professional and competent. It's their job to put the heat on the shady investment advisor. It's their job, commission up to where it's one of the top producers in the nation. We regularly are consulted by the SEC prior to making the next 10 years to be victimized by either an assault or a burglary. Louisiana is now the first state to offer anti-mugging insurance. That's Louisiana, not New York. You can't get such an insurance in New York. The shocking thing is that at least 1 out of every 5 boys in the United States will be
He was something, old slugger. Man, he was something.
He was, is he the nearest thing to the Babe since the Babe as a Yankee?
Well, I guess he is. Now, wait a minute. You got George DiMaggio in there, Mantle, too.
Yeah, you got to talk about him, too.
Sure, see, you got a couple in there. It's hard to compare these ball players like that, Phil. It sure is.
It's hard to compare one to Babe Ruth anyway, isn't it?
That's right. That's what I think. Now, of course, I'm favored of Babe Ruth, naturally, though I'm an old-timer. But that's the story.
What was Babe like day-to-day playing with it?
Babe Ruth?
Yeah.
Well, he was a team man. He wasn't no individual ball player. He was a team man. Now, listen, my 4 years at the Yankees, I dressed between Babe Ruth and Gehrig in the clubhouse, and I got to know those two men very well.
They were different, weren't they?
You bet. Babe was an extrovert, and Gehrig was an introvert. And Babe, listen, he'd give his shirt off his back. He was a team man and a good ball player and a smart ball player. He'd never been known to throw to the wrong base playing an outfield.
Yeah.
Never.
State School Superintendent Wayne Teague is one of 3 members on the authority awarding the money, but he was outvoted by Governor James and Finance Director Rex Rayner on today's list of awards. Dr. Teague says although most of the schools on the list were deserving, he felt there were some other schools with greater needs overlooked. The school superintendent was upset about an $800,000 award to the Mountain Brook school system in Birmingham and a $1.9 million award to Mobile County, where the superintendent says that system hasn't spent all of its current construction money.
We have a situation in this state where the youngsters going to school in facilities are unsafe, unsanitary, many other things. And we've not addressed those needs yet. And my concern is we keep doling out $10 to $15 million at a time, and when we're finished with this $45 million, many of our youngsters who have the greatest needs will not been served.
Governor James and Finance Director Rex Rayner argued their list was made from a much larger list suggested by the Department of Education. The superintendent disagreed. The school superintendent refused to speculate why the governor and the finance director included those several schools he felt weren't suffering as critical needs as other schools. Last month, the authority awarded $10 million out of the construction fund, and at that time, the governor received some criticism that the schools selected were based on how representatives and senators voted on his legislative reform package. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
October 31st and January 31st and April 30th.
I think the critical question here, and of course nobody knows what will happen on the Jenny Mays, is that as a callable feature in favor of the
I have great respect for his ability and everything. It was just my idea that I just felt like it was unnecessary, but I'm sure you all are much more experts at money matters than I am, and I certainly will cooperate and do whatever the board wants to do. You know, that's your decision.
Last season, the Laverne Tigers made it to the State 2A playoffs for the first time ever. Needless to say, Coach Glenn Daniel, around for the last 28 of those seasons, was happy to make it to the semifinals before being knocked out by Dadeville. Tiger fans are hoping for more of the same this season, and when you look at 9 returning starters and a number of experienced players coming back, there's reason for optimism in Laverne.
We lost 12 good seniors and real good leaders on our team last year that I think really brought us together. And we are kind of, you just have to tell as we get into schedule where we've got the same leadership that we had last year. But that's, I think, is going to be the factor. I think we've got enough people that have played. If they really put everything into it, we'll have a good chance.
Laverne will begin their hunt for a second straight playoff berth Thursday night, the 26th, at home versus Dozier. Tonight at 10 o'clock, a look at the Greenville Tigers. On the road with high school football preview, Rick Ponds, WSFA TV Sports in Laverne. For the last 2 years, the Tigers of Greenville have been 3A playoff contenders. Last season, it was into the semifinals before a loss to eventual champion Eufaula.
In order for Greenville to make it back to the 2A playoffs next year, Coach Woodham knows he must rebuild his offense. Gone from last year's team are 8 starters, including the top 3 running backs and the quarterback.
Well, we feel like, you know, right now, probably defensively we're a little stronger, and last year we did lose 8 starters off offense, and our first 3 tailbacks were seniors, and so I'd say right now at this point, you know, we're behind offensively.
Woodham says his schedule just might be the toughest in the state, with 3A powers Atmore, Andalusia, and Opp replacing Laverne, Dadeville, and Wilcox County from last season. The Tigers kick it all off Friday the 27th against rival Georgiana in Greenville. Tomorrow night, we visit Charles Henderson High in Troy and Eufaula. On the road with high school football preview, Rick Ponds, WSFA TV Sports in Greenville.
Opening statement, I'd like to open the floor for questions. Information is available. I think most of there were about 300 medical care they're receiving.
Was there a settlement?
If you're like those Alabamians who answered the healthcare survey, you'd probably agree that nowadays it's quite expensive to get well. As a result, 50% of those responding to the poll say they are not getting all the health care they need because of the high cost of medical care. The survey indicates the poor, less educated, and blacks who answered the telephone poll at random are more likely than others to say they don't get all the medical help they need. But for the most part, 31% of those polled say they are in excellent health, and State Medical Association President Dr. Ronald Henderson says physicians want to keep it that way.
We're promoting good health. We're promoting proper diet, no smoking, good exercise, drinking in moderation if at all, and spotlighting to the public the problems that would prevent disease.
The survey also showed that Alabamians have a high regard for their personal physician. About 90% said they have a great deal of confidence in their doctor. However, those surveyed also said they won't hesitate to sue their doctor for malpractice. Dr. Henderson says filing malpractice suits are a major concern among physicians. He says most of the suits aren't due to the doctor's negligence, but maloccurrence. And I'll tell you what that is tonight at 10. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
A water system for the city of Whitehall, and we feel proud today, not only for the state governor and this administration who has appointed more blacks to office than any other governor in the state of Alabama. Also, we are certainly
going to be available until 1985. So the earliest time that we could possibly have gotten in the water going through the Farmers Home Administration loan program was 1985.
we were in such a dying need for water. The city had a resolution to own its own water system, and the real question we were concerned about was getting water to the citizens now, and we wanted to do it the most feasible way. I think that the press carried it that we were in more demand of owning a system, but
let's don't give up, let's don't become complacent, let's keep working hard, and I think we can get it even.
Well enough that if we brought him here, it'd be impossible for him not to talk for an hour and a half with each of you.
She's in the back all the time. The receptionist is so funny, so she really has to. Well, I wouldn't let him come. It's like Elvin said, he would talk at the table. I'm trying to make him be.
This computer-guided laser beam scanner is one reason state liquor stores need fewer employees. The device instantly scans the bottles, identifies the product price, rings it up on the register, and takes the merchandise off inventory. Over half the state stores are now self-service, and the rest will be converted next year. The stores are also utilizing more part-time employees as a way to cut costs. ABC Administrator Joe Broadwater says he's been working to streamline the state-run liquor business since 1979. According to Broadwater, the need to reduce workers had been taken care of through normal attrition, but now he says they've improved the system such that layoffs are necessary.
And some of the positions that we are notifying them that that position is being abolished, this person will have seniority. He may, in turn, bump somebody in the ABC board system at another location that doesn't have the seniority that he has. So it'll take a little while for this to settle down as to actually who is hunting a job and who isn't.
State liquor store employees may be finding more layoff notices. According to Broadwater, he plans to reduce the workforce by another 100 around the first of the year. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
He did a pretty good job. He could use the radio and that sort of thing.
Oh no.
Huh?
You guys.
What the car?
the man?
See y'all later.
Okay.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed down today, but the real story is volume, record amounts of it. More issues changed hands on the New York Stock Exchange today than in any other day of trading in history.
You know, it's going to close down, but the volume today is 134 million.
Montgomery investment broker Ernest Cooper hopes this is the beginning of a major market rally following yesterday's record day.
Now, we may cycle between now and then, but I think the trend is going to be up in the stock market and down in the interest rate.
This two-day flurry was set off by an economist's prediction of lower interest rates. A number of major banks have joined the move to a 14% prime rate. Locally, First Alabama dropped its prime to 14% today. Union Bank and Trust went to 14% yesterday. Union Bank President Henry Leslie says mortgage rates won't go down automatically, but the drop in prime does represent a positive trend. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
You're cleared to go hot. Where's hot? And truck, report the IP. Holding. Roger, Gus Ryder.
The training exercise is a yearly combined effort of several military divisions, and the commander of one division says it's a rare opportunity for servicemen to practice individual battle maneuvers as part of a joint effort.
Well, first of all, we want it to be a tactical training exercise. That's the design of it. It'll bring together all of the skills and tactics and techniques that have been individually taught in our courses and taught in our units, and it'll give the participants a chance firsthand to do all of this in an integrated fashion.
It's also a chance for the military to show off its capabilities. A full line of Army combat hardware that is ready now in case of any conflict was brought out to the delight of several hundred onlookers. For the first time this year, the training maneuver included artillery and tanks. Officials say although this kind of maneuver is only conducted once a year at Rucker, that's enough to keep fighting skills sharply honed. So in the event of war, men will be able to quickly adapt to working together in battle conditions. And all of this may help bolster public support and confidence in the military.
I certainly think that it's
training that we allowed the public to come
even an obligation of the public to be informed, and it is our obligation to do what we can to inform them. And an informed public is an interested, concerned public.
Reporting from Fort Rucker, Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Attitude, and I think an exercise of this sort would impact favorably on public attitude.
Okay, Joe, you're cleared to go hot.
They came in helicopters. Airplanes. And tanks. Waging war against an imaginary enemy, but gaining experience that's very real. The annual tactical training exercise at Fort Rucker is a joint effort of the Army, Air Force, and Air National Guard. And although it draws a good crowd of spectators every year, it's not a show, but a practical exercise in military maneuvers. Today, the government got to bring out many of its first-string weapons, demonstrating not only their use, but also the skill of the men who use them. For just more than an hour, the men and machines went through their paces. Although this happens just once a year at Rucker, military officials say it does a lot of good. It boosts public support and confidence in the military, and it prepares servicemen for quick, efficient action in the event of war. Reporting from Fort Rucker, Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
State prison officials say they've spent all of their available money and will need as much as $6 million between now and the end of September just to meet the payroll and pay medical expenses. But this afternoon, the State Finance Office reported it had released $1 million in conditional funds to the prison system. Finance officials say the release was made despite a serious cash shortage in the general fund, and the release was made by belt tightening in other departments. Yesterday, Prison Commissioner Joe Hopper issued a memo to his department head stopping all purchases unless they directly affected the life or safety of inmates or employees. This includes repairs and travel between prisons. Prison spokesman Ron Tate says the $1 million conditional release will stave off problems meeting the payroll at the end of this week, but that's all. Mr. Tate says the Finance Office is now hoping to use money from new oil lease bids to be opened in September to help meet the payrolls for the rest of this fiscal year. Mr. Tate says there is another problem staring them in the face, a bill passed during the recent special session of the legislature. That bill would not allow inmates convicted of murder, first-degree assault, first-degree arson, first-degree rape, and first-degree kidnapping to take part in the work release program. Mr. Tate says he expects Governor James to veto the measure, but if he doesn't, it would force as many as 313 work release inmates convicted under one of those crimes to go back to the state prison. But Mr. Tate says there isn't any space for those inmates or the expected $740,000 it would take to fund housing the extra inmates. Governor James has until the middle of next week to act on that bill. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
The survey also showed that Alabamians have a high regard for their personal physician. About 90% said they have a great deal of confidence in their doctor and his work. However, those surveyed also said they won't hesitate to sue their doctor for malpractice. But the president of the Alabama Medical Association, Dr. Ronald Henderson, says most of the suits aren't due to negligence, but rather mal-occurrence. He explains that mal-occurrence results when a patient ends up with a disease that he wasn't being treated for, and he doesn't fully recover and becomes dissatisfied. But Dr. Henderson says patients believe modern medicine has instant cures for nearly all illnesses, and he says that's simply not true.
High expectation that modern medicine has brought to the public. The public expects a miracle in 100% of the cases. And I would hope that somewhere in the future we could have a miracle. We could have a 100% cure, but right now the state of the science is not to that.
The survey also indicated the poor, less educated, and blacks feel they don't receive all the medical help they need, primarily due to spiraling medical expenses. Dr. Henderson says if the costs continue to soar, the medical profession may have to make several changes in the healthcare profession.
It will cause changes in the healthcare process that will lead to either decreased quality of medical care or rationing of that medical care.
Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
Level and the national level.
We hope to know the position the Justice Department will take as we move into the final chapter of this litigation and these problems that have plagued the state of Alabama now for over 10 years.
What position would you like to see them take?
I would like to see them support the state's position 100%.
Thank you, sir.
Since 1979, the state-run liquor business has been undergoing changes. Alcoholic Beverage Control Board Administrator Joe Broadwater says he's been working to streamline the system and reduce the cost of operating. He says they've shortened hours of operation, converted the stores to self-service, reduced the paperwork required of store managers, hired part-time workers, modified management and personnel operations, and modernized equipment used in the stores. This computer-guided laser scanner reduces the need for personnel by performing several routine checkout functions at the same time. All this, says Broadwater, reduces the need for the equivalent of 114 full-time employees. And in November, he says the ABC state headquarters will move out of the Capitol complex to a new location, eliminating 25 more jobs. As the conversion of state liquor stores to self-service nears 100%, the ABC administrator says they'll abolish another 100 jobs. That reduction could come around the first of the year. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
Al was playing with Texas this year under a contract that he signed back in '78, and he was making